All right, so you want to know who owns BYD? The electric vehicle company that's giving Tesla a run for its money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out it's not as simple as just saying Warren Buffett.
Right.
We've got a stack of articles here, including excerpts from one called Who Owns BYD?
No way.
And trust me, the ownership picture is way more interesting than you might think.
It really is. We're going to untangle a web of shareholders from individuals to investment firms.
Right.
And what their stake in BYD tells us about the company's past, present, and most importantly for you, its future.
Okay, so the article breaks down BYD's shareholders into two categories, Class A and Class H shares. What's the difference and why should we care?
The difference is crucial, especially if you're thinking about investing.
Okay.
Class A shares typically have more voting rights,
Uh-huh.
giving those shareholders a bigger say in company decisions.
Okay.
It's like having a louder voice at the board meeting.
Right.
Class H shares, on the other hand, are often held by international investors, and they might have less direct influence.
So if I'm hearing you right, looking at who owns those Class A shares gives us a sense of who really controls BYD's direction.
Exactly. It's about understanding the power dynamics within the company.
Okay.
So let's start with Class A. The top shareholder there is Zhengyang Liu, who co-founded BYD with his cousin Juanfu Wang back in 1995.
Wow.
They started with a focus on battery manufacturing, which, looking back, is pretty insightful.
Talk about being ahead of the curve. But it makes you wonder, does that family connection mean BYD is resistant to outside influence, especially from those Class H investors we'll talk about later?
Right?
Something to consider if you're thinking long term?
It's a valid question.
Yeah.
Strong family ties can be a double-edged sword. It can mean loyalty and a long-term vision, but it also might make them less open to new ideas or changing course if needed.
Interesting. So what about this Chuanfu Wang?
Oh, he's fascinating.
Yeah, the article paints him as this incredible rags to riches story. From a farming village to leading the company that outsold Tesla in global EV sales.
His journey is fascinating.
Yeah.
And it might explain BYD's aggressive approach to growth.
Uh-huh.
This is someone who's not afraid to take risks,
Right.
which, as an investor, you should be aware of.
Okay.
It could mean big rewards, but also potential volatility.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've got the founding duo.
Right.
But what about other key Class A shareholders?
Well, there's Zhou Guanxia, a non-executive director at BYD with a background in insurance and investment.
Okay.
That diverse experience could be valuable in navigating the complex financial landscape of the EV market.
So they're not just car guys. They've got someone with serious financial chops.
Right.
That's good, right?
Could be.
Yeah.
It suggests they're thinking about the business from multiple angles, not just the technology.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got Nian Kang Wang, the chairman of BYD Precision Manufacture,
Okay.
and his expertise is in battery technology. That's obviously crucial for an ED company.
Guess you realize they've got all the bases covered.
And finally, we have China Investment Corp,
Okay.
which is a sovereign wealth fund, basically a country's big investment arm.
Wow.
Their presence is significant because it shows that the Chinese government sees BYD as a strategically important company.
Ah, so their investment isn't just about making money. It's about supporting a company that's aligned with China's economic goals.
Exactly. And that adds another layer of complexity for you as a potential investor.
Mm-hmm.
Government influence can be a powerful force, but it can also lead to unpredictability.
So taking stock of all these Class A players, what's the key takeaway here?
It's a mix of individuals deeply connected to BYD's history,
Right.
alongside those with expertise in finance and technology. This suggests a leadership team that understands both the technical and business sides of the EV industry.
Right.
But the big question is, how will they balance their ambitions with the potential influence of the Chinese government?
All right, so we've got a pretty good handle on the Class A landscape. But the article also mentions some big names in the Class H shareholder group, the international players.
Yeah,
That's where things get really interesting, right?
absolutely. And that's where we'll find Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company.
Right.
But before we jump into that, there's another major player on the Class H list we should discuss,
That's right.
BlackRock.
BlackRock, okay.
And it's not just BlackRock itself, but a bunch of its subsidiaries.
Okay.
BlackRock Fund Advisors,
Yeah.
BlackRock Advisors UK Limited,
Mm-hmm.
BlackRock Advisors LLC, and BlackRock Asset Management, North Asia Limited.
Whoa, that's a lot of BlackRocks.
Yeah.
Is it normal for these big endowment firms to have so many fingers in one pie?
It's not unusual,
Yeah.
especially for a global giant like BlackRock.
Okay.
They manage trillions of dollars in assets,
Right.
and they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Makes sense.
Each subsidiary might have a slightly different investment strategy.
Okay.
So you could have multiple BlackRock entities all betting on BYD, but for different reasons.
Okay, so maybe it's not some coordinated takeover attempt.
Right?
But wouldn't all these different strategies potentially create conflict within BYD?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do they all see eye to eye on BYD's direction?
Right.
Some might be focused on short-term profits, while others are in it for the long haul.
Right.
If their goals don't align,
Yeah.
that could create some tension within the company, which is definitely something you'd want to be aware of as an investor.
Makes sense. The article does mention BlackRock Advisors UK specifically investing in companies that are innovating in electric vehicles and renewable energy.
Right. And that tells us something important.
Okay.
They're not just throwing money at any electric vehicle company. They're being very selective looking for companies like BYD that are pushing the envelope and have the potential to dominate the market.
And BYD definitely seems to fit that bill.
Yeah.
They're not just building cars, they're also making the batteries, solar panels, even electric buses. It's like they've built a whole ecosystem around electric transportation.
Exactly. That vertical integration is a huge advantage.
Yeah.
They control the entire supply chain, which can make them more efficient and adaptable.
So BlackRock's interest, along with China Investment Corps, seems to signal that big institutions are starting to see the long-term potential of the EV sector.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're recognizing that this isn't just a fad. Electric vehicles are the future of transportation, and they're betting on companies like BYD to lead the charge.
Okay, so we've got these powerful investment giants on one side.
Right.
And the founding family with their history and ties to the Chinese government on the other.
Yeah.
Does this set the stage for some serious power struggles down the road?
It's certainly possible.
Right.
And you as an investor need to think about who's going to have more influence. Will BYD prioritize rapid expansion and market share, even if it means taking on more risk?
Right.
Or will they focus on building a sustainable, profitable business for the long haul?
That brings us back to Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett. Their whole investment philosophy is about holding on to companies forever, right?
Exactly. They're not looking for quick profits. They want to invest in companies that are going to be around for decades.
Right.
So their stake in BYD could be a stabilizing force,
Yeah.
preventing them from making rash decisions. But it could also mean slower growth, which might not appeal to some of the more aggressive investors.
So Berkshire Hathaway's presence could actually be a good thing if you're in it for the long game.
Potentially.
Yeah.
But it could also mean they're more resistant to change, which might be a problem in a fast-moving industry like electric vehicles. It's a delicate balance.
This makes me really curious about Berkshire Hathaway's initial investment in BYD back in 2008.
Yeah,
That was their first move into the EV market, wasn't it?
it was.
What made them choose BYD specifically? What did they see that others didn't?
That's a fantastic question. And to answer it, we need to understand a bit more about Berkshire Hathaway's investment philosophy.
Okay.
They're known for their incredibly thorough due diligence. They don't just throw money at any promising idea.
Right.
They dig deep, analyze the company's financials, their management team, their competitive landscape.
Okay.
So for them to choose BYD, they must have seen something truly special.
So what was it? Were they impressed by BYD's technology, their leadership, or maybe their position in the Chinese market?
It's probably a combination of all those factors.
Right.
But one thing that stands out to me is BYD's focus on vertical integration. Remember, they control almost every aspect of the EV production process, from the batteries to the cars themselves.
Right.
That gives them a huge competitive advantage, and I'm sure Berkshire Hathaway recognized that early on.
So they saw that BYD wasn't just making cars, they were building a whole system. That makes a lot of sense.
But there's another piece of the puzzle here.
Okay.
Back in 2008, the EV market was still in its infancy. Most people thought electric cars were a niche product, maybe a fad.
Right.
But Berkshire Hathaway saw the potential, even back then. They understood that the world was moving towards sustainable transportation. And they were willing to bet on the company that they believed would lead the way.
That's some serious foresight. It's like they had a crystal ball and saw the future of the auto industry.
It's more about understanding long-term trends.
Okay.
And recognizing the companies that are best positioned to capitalize on those trends.
Right.
And clearly they saw that in BYD.
Right. But how did they know? What specific information did they have that gave them that confidence? It's almost like we need to launch another deep dive just to answer that question.
It would definitely be fascinating to dig deeper into Berkshire Hathaway's decision-making process.
Yeah.
We could analyze their public statements,
Mm-hmm.
interviews, maybe even their financial filings, and try to piece together the story behind that pivotal investment. But for now, let's bring it back to our listener and what this all means for them.
So we've got this fascinating mix of players, individuals with deep ties to BYD's history. The Chinese government, with its own strategic interests and global investment giants looking to capitalize on the EV boom.
Right.
What does it all mean for someone who's maybe thinking about investing in BYD
Hmm.
or just wants to understand where the company might be headed?
That's the key question. BYD's ownership structure isn't just a list of names.
Right.
It's a roadmap.
Okay.
It tells us about their past, their present, and most importantly, gives us clues about their potential future.
So if I'm reading this roadmap right, it seems like BYD is at a crossroads.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the backing of some of the biggest investors in the world,
Yeah.
but they also need to navigate these complex relationships and potentially conflicting interests.
Exactly. And for you, the listener, that means understanding these dynamics is crucial if you want to make informed decisions about BYD.
All right, so let's break it down. We've got the founding family with their deep roots in China.
Mm-hmm.
And we know the Chinese government sees BYD as a strategically important company.
Right.
Could that make them less appealing to international investors?
It's a factor to consider.
Okay.
Some investors might be wary of the level of government influence. They might worry about political interference or the potential for regulations that could impact BYD's profitability.
But on the flip side, wouldn't that government support also be a huge advantage, especially in the Chinese market?
Absolutely.
Right.
Having the government on your side can open doors, provide subsidies, and even create a more favorable regulatory environment.
Right.
So it's a trade-off.
Okay, so we've got the government angle. Then there's the question of growth. We
Huh.
know Tuan Fuwang, the CEO, has a history of taking risks
Yeah.
and pushing for rapid expansion.
Right.
But we've also got Berkshire Hathaway, known for their long-term, value-driven approach.
Exactly.
Could those two philosophies clash?
It's definitely a possibility. Berkshire Hathaway might prefer a more cautious, measured approach to growth,
Right.
while the founding family might be pushing for more aggressive expansion. That tension could play out in interesting ways.
So as an investor, you'd have to ask yourself, am I comfortable with that level of risk? Do I believe BYD can maintain this rapid growth without sacrificing profitability? These are tough questions.
And there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
It all comes down to your individual investment goals and risk tolerance.
Right.
But understanding these underlying dynamics within the ownership structure can help you make more informed decisions.
It's like having a peek behind the curtain. We're not just looking at numbers on a balance sheet. We're seeing the human element, the motivations and relationships that are driving the company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those factors can be just as important as the financials when it comes to assessing a company's long-term prospects.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've untangled the complex web of BYD's ownership from the founding family to global investment giants.
Right.
And we've explored how those relationships could shape the company's future. Any final thoughts for our listener before we wrap up this deep dive?
I think the key takeaway here is that understanding who owns a company is about more than just names and percentages. It's about understanding the motivations, the relationships, the potential for conflicts or synergy.
All right.
And for you, the listener, that knowledge can be incredibly powerful. It can help you make smarter investment decisions, understand industry trends, and even anticipate how a company might navigate the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
Well said. So the next time you see a BYD car on the road, remember that there's a whole world of stories behind. The vehicle, stories of innovation, ambition, and the complex interplay of global forces. And if you're interested in investing or just understanding how the electric vehicle revolution is unfolding,
Yeah.
taking a closer look at who owns the players in this space can give you a real edge.
It's all about connecting the dots and seeing the bigger picture.
Right.
And that's what makes these deep dives so rewarding.
Absolutely. So until our next deep dive, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those important questions.